Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The New Claims Agenda, Strategic Priorities for Claims in the New Insurance Landscape. My name is Greg Donaldson. I'm a Senior Property and Casualty Analyst with the Aite Group. My job is essentially to try and understand what's going on in the insurance industry and examine that in relationship to what's going on with technology and figure out how that is going to impact our industry and what carriers and vendors need to know. So my job is to kind of act as a conduit between vendors that are coming up with lots of really neat new ideas and using technology in new ways, and the carriers who really need to understand how that's going to impact their value chain and affect their business, and hopefully lower some costs, increase profitability, make customer service a much smoother experience, and all of the things that go with that. So I've come to Aite Group with a little over 25 years of experience in the insurance industry, and I've been here for 2 years. So I've had a chance to get around and talk to some folks, and this current situation that we're in has really presented our industry with a lot of new challenges, things that we really couldn't picture in our heads and couldn't think ahead to anticipate. And that makes our industry uncomfortable. Insurance is an industry that likes to plan. We like to know what's coming so we can figure out how to get ready for it and make our businesses as efficient as possible in dealing with those unexpected things that come up. But this is a little beyond the scope of that. So one of the things that's happened is it's forced our industry to move faster. We've had to take a look at how we do business and move tons of our employees, or massive amounts of our employees, from working in an office to working from their homes, or figure out new ways to interact with our customers. We've had to understand that the sales process may not be the same anymore, and we have to figure out new ways to get around that. And perhaps most importantly, since it makes up one of the largest or the largest portion of our expense profile, figure out how to handle claims. And our industry has always been very good at working with customers to understand how insurance is supposed to work and holding their hands and escorting them from the beginning to the end of the claims process and making that as smooth as possible. But the current situation has prevented a lot of those tried and true techniques from being possible anymore. It's no longer common practice in the last few months for a claims adjuster to just go out and meet with a policyholder. It's not as possible for our claims groups to get together and work together to try to figure out how to handle claims and how to process those. But this has also presented us with a new opportunity, and that's really what we've come together to talk about today. What we want to do today is we want to have a discussion. We want to tell you about where we think claims is starting to move. And this isn't a process that started a month or two ago. This is a process that has been ongoing, but I think we can all agree that in the last couple of months, this has accelerated the movement from our traditional understanding of how claims should be handled to what the new reality is going to look like in the near future. And I couldn't ask for a better group of people to sit and listen to tell you about what that process is going to look like and where we are in that journey. So what I'd like to do now is just introduce our first speaker and let them take it away and talk to you. As we go through the process today, please feel free to enter any questions that you have in the messaging system, and those will get funneled to me at the end. We're going to do 3 quick presentations, one from each of our presenters, and then at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A. So please feel free to send the questions in. We'll get to as many as we can, and sit back and enjoy the information that you're about to get. So our first presenter today is Graham Gibson. Graham is the Chief Claims Officer at Allianz UK. He joined Allianz as a Director of Claims in June of 2008 and has worked with responsibility for customer service, technical integrity, and has been a member of the UK Management Board. Essentially, his responsibilities have included things such as procurement, claims, fraud, pretty much everything claims associated. He's had a number of senior management positions, and he represents Allianz through a number of market initiatives. So he's very well positioned to talk about, from a carrier perspective, what's going on right now, some of the steps that need to be taken and how those will apply to what the future of claims might look like. So Graham, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. I think when you look at anything, no matter what it is, you've got to apply a customer lens. And certainly within Allianz, we've been doing that pre-COVID. So really trying to understand what our customers want and what they are telling us. Now, Allianz in the UK is a commercial insurer, and we typically underwrite fleet, property, and casualty. So just to make you aware of that. We're hearing a couple of things loud and clear. So what we're hearing is that our customers want a simple claims process and a complex claims process. Now, each company can define that in their own way, but it's very clear that that's the two things that our customers are thinking about. Now, I know Mario is going to talk about what complex looks like a bit later on, so I'm just going to kind of park that to one side and talk about simple. Now, interestingly, I worked for a company in 1991, and yes, I am giving my age away, and yes, it was a long time ago, who did a bit of research around what customers want in terms of claims handling. And what that research said was speed, communication, and technical knowledge. Now, interestingly, our recent customer research says that today our customers want speed, communication, and technical knowledge. So in many, many ways, nothing has changed, but everything's changed. If I go back to 1991, you may remember this, carbonated paper, typing pools, big piles of files on desks. I even worked in an office where smoking was allowed, so that just shows you how far ago that was. Today, it's very much about digital, it's about data, it's about transparency, it's about an end-to-end customer ecosystem that can be used at any time that's convenient to the customer. So the principles are the same, the delivery has changed massively. And when we speak to people like our fleet managers, what they say to us is things like, I want to be able to report a claim through a portal at night when I'm at home. I don't want to have to pick up the telephone or send you an email. If one of my drivers has an accident, I want to be able to send them a link so they can sort of fill it in on an app and I can see it, you can see it. And then off the back of that, we're looking at automated processing. So looking at tools that can actually straight through process the claim without any touch at all. And in our motor arena, we are achieving that to quite a high degree. Interestingly, I'm just going to throw some numbers out. When we deployed our digital tool set, we deployed it in March. We had test and learn, but we actually deployed it in March 2019. And between March and January 2020, so 10 months, we had 23,000 digital interactions. From February to April, so 4 months, and obviously that includes the COVID period, we've had 100,000 digital interactions. So a massive step change in terms of the use of digital tools to deal with our customers' claims. And obviously that's helped us in terms of taking pressure off contact center folk who are, as we've mentioned earlier, working from home. So some very clear messages from our customers. And I would sum it up by saying they want quick, simple, transparent interaction, great communication in real time, and technical knowledge. Now, technical knowledge has moved away from a claims handler, and the technical knowledge has moved very much into digital assets, data, and how you interact with the customer. To the extent that we don't actually talk about these three things differently anymore. If you could picture a Venn diagram of customer, data, and digital, what we've seen over time is that Venn diagrams start to overlap more and more and more until where we are today, where they are basically the same thing. So we are seeing customer interaction, feed the data, feed our digital assets, and then that goes back into the customer loop. Now, I've not got time to go through it, but obviously that means a significant change in the people that we're employing. So, you know, traditionally claims departments would employ maybe lawyers or people with building degrees, that sort of thing. we are now employing data analysts and digital experts. So a real step change and difference in terms of the type of people that we are bringing on board. Now, in amongst my many things that I'm responsible for, I am the chairman of Thatcham. And for those that don't know, Thatcham is a vehicle repair institute. It's globally renowned, and it does things like NCAP testing. Now, Thatcham's very motor-based, but I use it as a proxy of what's happening. I joined Thatcham in 2012 and became the chairman 2.5 years ago. When I joined Thatcham, it focused on vehicle repairs and Thatcham alarm systems. I'm sure many of you will know about, Thatcham grading alarms. So that was the two things that really looked at: repair methods and alarms. Today, Thatcham still looks at these things, but now has a data component. It's looking at tech in terms of how the vehicle interacts, not only with the driver, but with the outside world in terms of 5G, in terms of the technology that's coming into vehicles. It's looking at various aspects of vehicle construction, which have changed completely. So a typical vehicle has a chassis, 4 wheels, an internal combustion engine, and a steering wheel. And for actually about 125 years, that's not really changed. Yes, the technology's got better, but the way it's built is identical. We are starting to see vehicles come into the market that are built completely differently, don't have internal combustion engines, and have technology that allows assisted or automated driving. That poses a very different underwriting risk and very different considerations, and it's that type of thing that Thatcham is looking at. So what I'm really saying there is that we are going from a world where there are maybe 1 or 2 things to look at, where there are now multiple things to look at over an extended estate, which brings multiple collaborations with various businesses. And if you're building anything in the digital world, that's something that you have to get your head around. So with that, I'm going to pass back to Greg, and I'll be more than happy to take your questions later.
Thank you, Graham. That was very informative. I appreciate your time. So our next speaker, as Graham alluded to, is going to talk a little bit more about, say, maybe some more complex claim situations. So I'd like to introduce Mario Ricco. He is the group head of claims at Generali Group. He works with property and casualty, health, and the protection lines of business. And since 2013 has been driving technical excellence and claims transformation across the group's business units in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. He has 19 years of experience in claims management and 11 years with Generali. So Mario, if you could please share some of your information with us, we would be very, very appreciative.
Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon to everyone. So happy to join this this webinar, and I'll try to give some ideas not only on complex claims, also on the simple ones, but maybe with a view more on the retail business, which is more where Generali is present, and having a more perspective on our presence, which is more on continental Europe, a bit in Latin America and Asia. So I'm happy also for this webinar in this specific context that is giving us a bit of lessons on working from home and interacting remotely with anyone, and also on adaptability, which is also providing us the proof that it's possible to change and adapt quickly to new contexts. So one first priority, and I wanted to share, which is not really new. It's an old priority and an ongoing priority to every claims organization, which is about technical excellence, which is to continue delivering great customer experience, accuracy of payments, reserves, and also efficiency of claims activities, which historically has been a challenging task because sometimes you have to manage trade-offs, but probably the new context we are living now is allowing us to deliver, to maximize all these dimensions, and that is probably the new agenda for claims organizations. And in this context, I wanted to share some thoughts on three aspects. One is about virtual claims handling. The other one is about automation of controls, and the third on human touch. Those are not new topics in claims. What probably is new in virtual claims, automation of controls and human touch is that we can deliver that on a larger scale. And that is what I wanted to spend some words with you. So first, by virtual claims management, I have in mind remote interaction, which is something that we are experiencing a lot these days. But remote interaction on a larger scale with anyone, any type of stakeholder in the claims process, any type of partner or provider. And this is probably the main concept around virtual claims handling. It is also something about self-service solutions, where we delegate or empower the customer to do things by their own in the claims process. And the virtual claims management is probably what is going to be most impactful in claims if applied on a larger scale, because it would allow us to be much more faster on one side, but also much more proactive. And probably is where it's the way we are able to get more efficiency in the claims process, more than automating tasks, more on making and bringing the claims management process into the virtual world. Then the second topic that I see more and more now, and it's very promising, it's concerning automation of controls. Why that? I see that more and more there are companies providing new services or new technologies. We are also building more and more inside insurance companies and also inside claims teams capabilities to analyze, well, first collect and then analyze internal and external data. And that is it is allowing us to have a great impact. In supporting claims teams and claims experts in taking decisions faster, taking decisions more accurate, and most of all, it's also enabling us to do more controls and more things that we're not doing in the past, and not just automating the controls we're using today. And that is, of course, combined with a virtual type of interaction. It is a powerful effect on claims overall. And this is something that it's not something related to simple on standard claims. It can be applied to any complexity. So the point here is, how can we support and augment the decision-making capacity of our people and experts. And the third point on the human touch, this is probably where we make the difference in the relationship with customers, where we make the difference, especially on the more severe losses. And this is basically how we communicate and interact again with our customers, but also the services and solutions we provide to support our customer to solve their problems. So this is a bit the three topics I wanted to highlight. Of course, to achieve or to deliver virtual claims handling, automation of controls, and human touch on a larger scale, we have to pay attention to two areas. One, of course, it's about technology. And here I want to highlight, because we have so many technologies that we see every day. I wanted to highlight let's say the fundamental or the infrastructure of claims systems. And here, just to give one topic about the claims workflow system, which is and can connect all the different technologies, solutions, and also manage the interaction between the different stakeholders. Second aspect is on people, and also Graham was mentioning that, which is probably the second as well more relevant area to work on going forward in claims, which is about the engagement of the people in this change, but also in working to shift the organization, because more and more we have people that should be dedicated to projects, to control activities. If we have in place more automated processes, we need to have also more people dedicated to manage these processes and also to control what is happening there, and most of all to adapt more quickly, because one of the learnings, not only on this phase, but what all the new technologies can today provide, is that we are able also to adapt much more quicker than in the past, where you used to go through a traditional implementation project and then work for a long time with that implementation. So now it's more dynamic, and you need also a claims team to support that adaptability and dynamism in evolving processes. So this is a bit what I wanted to share with you. I hope I am on time. So I give back the words to Greg.
Thank you, Mario. Your timing is perfect. Everybody is doing great so far, and thank you as well. That was a nice transition and a nice alternative view. So I think we have a great understanding right now of kind of, from a carrier perspective, both commercial and personal lines, where the claims process was, how that journey is transpiring. So now I'd like to introduce our third speaker, Adrien Cohen. He is the co-founder and president at Tractable. And as president, he's responsible for leading the commercial and operational activities at Tractable. He began his career, he's been all over the place, by the way. He began his career at Goldman Sachs as in the investment banking division, and then moved to Southeast Asia, where he co-founded a company called Lazada, which quickly became a leading e-commerce player. So he spent 4 years in that region of the world, building up that company, and then it eventually was sold. He returned back to Europe, where he founded Tractable, so yet another industry. So Adrien, I understand that you're going to talk to us a little bit more in depth about the digital transformation going on in claims. So please share your knowledge with us and tell us a little bit about what you want us to know today.
Thank you, Greg, for the introduction, and definitely I'll need to look into the biographies that are shared with you. And thanks, Mario and Graham, for sharing your thoughts. I'll try to stay on time as well. I think, indeed insurers are looking to move quickly in response to COVID-19. Greg, in your introduction, you said that the industry is now uncontrollable. You used that word. I really agree with that. I think to succeed, we're going to have to enable the industry to accelerate its digital adoption. Now, at Tractable, which is, an AI company, we're currently working with the world's largest insurers across 12 countries. So again, a bit all over the world, in North America, in Europe, in Asia. And really that gives us unique insight into how insurers are using AI to change and simplify the claim process. And what we're hearing from our clients across the world is an increased sense of urgency. With COVID-19, there's been obviously more urgency in the market for virtual technology that Mario was touching upon. I think insurance companies want technology that's going to be able to help their appraisers, their body shops, and eventually provide a touchless experience for their policyholders where it makes sense. This is not new. I think Mario was pointing this out as well. This is rather the acceleration of a trend that was already in play. So, today I'd like to really share a bit of thoughts on what we see as the ultimate claim journey looking like for both the industry and the end customer. How AI today is helping, leading carriers like Ageas in the UK, Covia in France, Tokio Marine in Japan. And so I'll use the time to walk you through 2 concrete examples, how AI is interacting with the policyholder, and so how you can use this technology to really, improve the customer experience, and then how AI is today also helping body shops. So really 2 crucial steps in the claim process, and hopefully this will give you a sense of how new technologies today are simplifying and accelerating the journey with the end vision of really converting the process from weeks into days. So I'll start with the first notice of loss. I'll start with the beginning of the process. So as most of the audience would know, every vehicle recovery starts with a visual appraisal. You have an expert that's going to inspect the damage to the vehicle and estimate the cost for fixing it. Now, if you use AI for appraising the damage, it's a bit like having an expert that has seen millions of vehicles and that can proceed and perform this task in seconds. The second thing that's really interesting and that this new technology has kind of brought to the claim process is the consistency. An AI will stay consistent vehicle after vehicle after vehicle. So it's about speed, it's about scale, and it's about consistency. Now, I would like to share one good example of using this kind of technology in the FNOL process with what AGS has been doing. As you know, AGS is a global insurer, and it's using this AI to produce end-to-end estimate during the first notice of loss call on a ramping up of thousands and thousands of claims every month. And the way it works is that the customer can call in, will get a link, capture a few photos, and immediately get a decision on whether the car should be repaired, whether it's a total loss, etc., before hanging up the phone. And so, Mario, you were mentioning this self-service. That is really where this is converging. This is the ability to really enable the decision-making while your customer is still on the phone, or ideally without even the need to be on the phone. And in this example, AGS can send the vehicle down the right channel to the shop or to the salvage yard based on this accurate assessment that is a visual assessment instead of blind scoring tool. And as a whole, this really shortens the usual process. We've seen improvement of over a week of key-to-key time improved by having this information at the very beginning of the process. Now, I'll share another example of another major European insurer that is using this technology to go one step further and to actually offer cash settlement on the spot. And in this example, you can actually wire the money while, just based on the first information you get, and really settle the claim in a day rather than weeks. So if you take a step back, the benefits here of real-time triage and potentially settling the claim right away where the cases make sense are obvious. It's not just about speed and cost, it's about the customer and the policyholder experience. Graham, you really mentioned this, and I think it really resonated, the need for a simple process where I think you said speed and transparency matters the most, and this is really what this is about. Now, if you move on from the first notice of loss to later down the claim process and the body shop part of the workflow, here you also have a clear example of how AI today is accelerating the process, this time by interacting with the body shop. And here the way this works is that you use this train AI to minimize the back and forth between the insurance companies and the body shop and really converge to an instant approval so the body shop can get on with its job. And so here an example I'd like to share with the audience, and hopefully that there will be useful, is what Covia has been implementing in France. Covia is the #1 auto insurer in France. They're processing close to 1 million claims every year. And in this example, the AI is being used to really ensure that the repair shop and the insurance company are aligned in real time. And that is enabled by having the AI visually reviewing 100% of the estimates. And in this example, the goal here is really to give as much autonomy as possible to the body shop so that they don't need to wait for an approval and can really progress and proceed with the repair. The approval is much faster. The body shop get to repair more cars, which at time of COVID is critical. That's more profits for the body shop, while the insurance company continues to ensure that the best and safest methods are applied. There is another great benefit here, because if you use the scale of AI, Covea can actually make sure that the body shops are using the best practices and the safest repair methods. And really what you see here is that by using this kind of technology, you can work with the less consistent performers to educate and elevate them to operate at the standard it expects. So essentially, in effect here, the AI is really acting as, I would say, a real-time coach that is guiding the body shop, learning from the best players and using this data to elevate the others. And what this means overall is that Covea's body shops are processing more cars faster and are just getting a lot better. So, in conclusion, I'd say those are just two examples of what we see as the right and kind of ultimate claim journey, or at least two steps toward this journey, and that we see the industry adopting across the world. A better and faster decision at first notice of loss, potentially including a customer self-service, and an increased autonomy for the body shop with the end vision of accelerating the journey end to end. Of course, and I think, Mario, you talked about that, this is being adopted at varying speed. There is some resistance. Some insurers have tried solutions in the past and it wasn't good enough. And so maybe there's a trust issue. Some insurance companies have tried to build that in-house as well. The reality, and this is kind of my closing remarks here, is the reality is for this to work, for this to reach the right kind of expert performance, which is a very, very high bar, you need two things. You need a vast amount of data. I'm talking about millions and millions of data points. Like AI is actually pretty dumb and the limitations are pretty heavy. And so you need more data than just what one insurer or one country can provide. And second, you need the right deeply specialized deep learning or AI team who can turn that data into a working AI. And very few companies have actually been able to combine both. So to conclude and say, yeah, the pace of innovation is not slowing, rather the opposite. This is a very difficult transition, but it's an important one. And with that, I'd be very happy to take questions or have follow-up conversations on how we're driving those transformation across the claim journey. Thank you. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you very much. So I think we're at a point now where we're ready to take some questions. Please, those of you who are out there listening, if you have any questions, don't forget to submit those. We've got plenty of time to address them. So first of all, this first question is actually for all three of you. And I'd like to start with Graham and then Mario and then Adrien last, just the same order that you presented. But this was a question that's actually looking a little bit forward and looking maybe beyond just the claims handler, but from the perspective of claims management, like managing the claims process, not just one-to-one, but more as from an organizational level. How do you see that changing in the next, say, 12 to 24 months and beyond? Given what you've seen so far and the pace that we're seeing right now, what does that look like to you? Graham?
So a couple of points, I think, on that. So certainly with an Allianz, and I think it's a market thing as well, claims used to be considered a bit of a back office, something that sort of sat behind the sales teams. That's simply not the case anymore. We are now front and center of everything that an insurance company does. Within Allianz, we talk about claims at the heart of the proposition, and we are absolutely living that. So pushing claims very much forward and using it as a sales technique. And I think that's something that is going to continue over the next 12 to 24 months. I think the second point I would make, we've already touched on it. I mean, we have changed more in the last 2 months than we probably have in the last 2 years. We had the planning in place and we were certainly working through digitalizing the business. But if I look at Allianz, as very particular, we're quite a conservative company. We plan carefully, we take our time, we do lots of proof of concepts, etc. That's basically gone right out the window, and we've just put some stuff in to see how it works, and it's worked really, really, really well. So I see a real acceleration in terms of being much, much braver and using technology to improve a whole gambit of deliverables.
Excellent. Mario, thoughts?
Well, first, I also shared the comments of Graham when mentioning that claims is and should not be considered as a back office. We also spent a lot on this in Generali companies. I must say that companies that in the past treated claims as a back office had problems sooner or later. So this is definitely one important aspect to have in mind going forward. I believe in the coming 12 or 24 months, a lot will also be driven by what we are experiencing during these months. So I think that will be inevitably not a neutral aspect going forward. One thing that for sure is going to change in the coming months is the way claims teams are organized, and they're more and more working from home. I think this is something that will remain as something out. It started already in the past, but during this months, it's probably showing that it works and has some benefits. So that will have an impact on the overall claims organization, also how teams are organized, how team managers interact with their colleagues, and so on. There will be also, I believe, more and more virtual interaction, because it is proved also during this period that is possible and feasible and well accepted by everyone to interact remotely. And this is a bit, let's say, an acceleration that is coming from this phase. It is already happening, and it's probably it's going to continue in the next months, is to have the claims organization more and more working on a cross-functional basis, because to achieve all the things we have been discussing so far, the claims organization alone cannot do it. So you have to work with IT teams, technology teams, providers, marketing teams, and compliance, and so on. So there is a need more and more to collaborate and work on a cross-functional basis to get all these things done. So this is, I think, in a nutshell, what I believe is happening in the coming months.
Perfect. Adrien, from the standpoint of a vendor, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Of course, I mean, from my standpoint, when you talk about, how the claim process is going to evolve and what's going to be the priority, the first thing that comes to mind is really the customer and the first notice of loss. I think, today, all of the discussion around acquiring data and interacting with the customer in a digital way are a priority, but the adoption is still quite low. And I think with this new environment, I expect that more and more policyholders will want to interact with their insurance company remotely. And I expect that we will need to be able to put in place the right solutions to be able to make more decisions remotely and at the very beginning of the process. And so, I touched upon some of the things you can do at FNO. Actually, I think the scope is much bigger, and the way this can help the entire ecosystem is actually much bigger. What I envision is actually a claim process where from the very beginning, more policyholders are actually collecting photos, which today is maybe anywhere between 5 to 20%, depending on markets, which is still a small fraction. I think this is going to increase massively. And with more photos being collected at the beginning and more intelligent solution, more initiatives will be able to be implemented. You'll be able to triage cars, you'll be able to order parts, you'll be able to settle cash, you'll be able to coordinate with car rental. So a number of decisions that are very inefficient today could actually be much more streamlined. And a big driver and a big enabler for that is really the digital adoption of the policyholder and their use of those solutions, which I see as increasing exponentially in the next 12 to 24 months, in part driven by COVID, but mostly just as an underlying trend.
Excellent, thank you. So I have another question. Again, this will be for all three of you, and we'll do the same round robin with Graham and then Mario and then Adrien. This one concerns fraud. As we move more towards an automated claim sequence for at least some of the claims, some of the more simple ones, and as you've got more AI involvement, how does that process match up with fraud flagging and fraud rates? Tell me a little bit about your experience so far, and maybe what some of the steps that you've put in place to kind of help identify and maybe prevent or pull out the fraudulent claims. Graham?
So actually quite a short answer. If you're not running automated AI across your digital estate from a fraud perspective, you're probably in very deep trouble. So you have to be doing it, and we are. I describe fraud like this. So there's no point in putting a brick in a wall. You need to build a wall. So you need several bricks that do very different things, because fraudsters are quite clever folk. You'll see in my bio, I am a director of the IFB, the Insurance Fraud Bureau. So I've got a really good insight. So you've got to build a wall using different bricks and make it very, very hard for the fraudsters to climb over said wall. And And one of the bricks, if you like, is definitely real-time fraud analysis of your digital estate.
Perfect. Mario?
Yeah, I share all the comments, and if we want to automate more processes, we need also to be able to handle fraud automatically in real time. That is inevitably. Otherwise, we'll get into really big problems because we're going to automatize fraudulent claims. So, which will be a great service for fraudsters. The point that to do that, it's where I was mentioning that we need to be more and more sophisticated and in building automatic controls, because that's something that we have to do it and learning over time and invent news and add new control points. And we need to have also very good experts here to build these controls. And here I'm talking about fraud experts, not only about technology experts, because someone needs to tell the technology people what fraud scenarios you want to address. And you have to also handle or have a process, an automated process, which is able to take out the suspicious claims and to handle them properly. So it is not only about the algorithm for automatic fraud detection, but it's also how you set up your automated claims process and fraud mitigation process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the insurer will remain, I think, the first line of defense. And it's very clear that as you automate more, you will find more type of fraud, right? And new types of fraud. And our experience here has been that, the only way you're successful here is with the right level of collaboration between the insurance company and the vendor. As you implement new processes and as you accelerate part of the journey, you'll end up with fraudsters that are trying to come up with new types of fraud, right? They're trying to mislead the AI, trying to manipulate photos, right? Trying to reuse certain photos, trying to come up with different type of liability issues, etc., etc. And the only way you catch those is by continuously working with the domain expert and continuously improving and adding the right modules to catch those fraud. And here it has to be a collaborative effort. It needs to be a work that is done by the insurance company, and where applicable, where the vendor can help. In our case, we're obviously very focused on the type of fraud you can detect from visual information, but there's a number of other type of frauds that we simply don't cover, right? And that we need to work really hand in hand with the insurance company to make sure that all the types of fraud are being taken care of, and that we constantly update our kind of playbook on this.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you guys. Graham, I loved your brick by brick analogy. One of the things that when I've spoken on fraud before is I like to talk about different walls. So you're making the fraudster hurdle so many different walls that they're going to trip eventually. But the brick thing that works, and I like that. I like kind of that visual analogy that you build. So thank you guys for that. Fraud is huge, and it has to be a part of the process in order for us to be able to catch it. So staying one step ahead is very challenging. So I have another, and this is a question that really fits this panel pretty well because you all have such experience globally. We have a couple of different questions, and they attack it a couple of different ways. But in general, given what you've experienced from region to region, country to country, different parts of the world, this process that we're talking about, how does it differ from place to place? Are there certain areas where companies need to maybe think about it differently? Or is the overall process pretty homogeneous and can apply anywhere? Graham?
So as part of my role, I sit on what's called the Allianz Global Claims Committee. So we look at claims strategy across the Allianz Group. And what we see pretty clearly is that most things are virtually the same. So if I take motor claims as an example, that would be a good example. What we see is that 90% of what the products offer, the interaction with the customer, the way that vehicles are built, etc., is the same. The bits that differ are the regulatory environment and the legal environment. So if you put them to one side and then look at the technologies that you're deploying, they are virtually the same. So I think historically, we've all perhaps been a bit guilty of this. I know I have, to say, oh, but in the UK it's a bit different, or in France or in Germany or whatever. But when you really, really get into it, no, it's not. It's the same, save for the two things that I've mentioned. And if you can actually grasp that as an organization, I think it gives you a real benefit. And if I look at Allianz and the size and shape of Allianz and the tools that we're developing, we're building once, deploying globally, and that really does give us an advantage versus some of our competitors.
Thank you, Mario.
Well, what I can add to that, of course, from a process-wise, it's similar. What changes is regulation, sure. But if I can add other two additional aspects that I see working with different countries and regions. One is the behavior of customers and local market practices, which of course it is today because it was influenced by the way insurers behaved in the past. So maybe if we start doing things differently, we can influence also that. But it's true that if you go from one country to another, people behave differently, they demand differently, and they react differently when they have a claim, and that you see that reflected also in claims. For example, if you take motor, some countries, if I have a damaged vehicle, I go to repair, and then the whole claims process is between the insurance and the body shop. Some other countries, people are ready to accept a cash settlement and then take care by itself on the reparation. So that, of course, from a claims process changes because in one case you talk to the customer, in the other one you talk to a repairer. So this is from the behavior and market practice. And then there is a second aspect, which is about the distribution channels. Of course, if customers are working or are buying insurance from a direct company, the relationship is more direct, let's say. But if you have a broker or an agent, then of course you have this important relationship. That also, in the moment of a claim, is the first probably contact person. So you go to your trusted agent to ask for advice or to know what to do. So you that influences also what happens on claims. From a process-wise and from a product, I would say that more and more over time, countries and regions are converging because people are learning from each other and trying to bring all the good things on the product side and on the processes. But at the end, you have the cultural and the human aspect that still is very different from place to place.
Perfect. Adrien, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably be a bit more brave because I really agree with what Graham and Mario just said. I would stress the consistency point. I think we're a good example that there is consistency because in 3 years from our first customer going into production, we've scaled to 12 different markets. And that tells you that essentially a damaged car in Japan or France or Canada is a damaged car. Of course, you have local repair methods and you need to calibrate and fine tune and adjust. But the reality and what you're learning from, for instance, our collaboration with Tacham in the UK, there's a lot of learnings you can use in other countries, right? And so you have some differences at a low level, but the big picture is that there is a lot of consistency, that across the world we're seeing a journey of converging towards the same goal. I think it's not so much a country thing than a company thing, if I'm honest. I think some companies are moving faster than others, want to adopt new technology and change the process faster, and that is not country specific. That's more an organizational thing. And that is how you end up, working with some of the largest in certain markets and not all of the companies in a given market. And that is not driven by the process. The value is there. It's more driven by the really the culture and the ambition of the company.
Excellent. So I have one quick follow-up, and I just want you guys to just touch on it briefly. Graham, both you and Mario touched on motor claims. But if you turn it around and look at it from a home or residence claim standpoint, do any of the answers or any of the subjects that we've talked about change significantly, or is that a different process, or is it pretty much just a claim?
From my perspective, it's pretty much just a claim. Yes, it's a different type of claim, so you might be repairing a property as opposed to a vehicle. Basically, because Allianz is a big wheels insurer in the UK, we started with motor. We also felt it was easier in terms of just the learnings. But what we're seeing is that we are starting to deploy just about the same stuff into property, and then we'll look at casualty. What probably differs a little bit is just the tool set at the end. So the consideration around data and customer is virtually identical. We're using slightly different tool sets to deliver property repairs, but things like We Go Look See and Global 360, they are just tools to look at a particular issue. So lots and lots of similarities, just a different fulfillment.
Mario, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, it's I believe it's similar. Maybe you have to, of course, adapt. Maybe in case of motor, it works well with photos. Maybe for interaction, maybe in home video, it's more effective to have a look what's happening. But the concepts and the ideas we have been talking today, they fit to all lines.
Perfect. Adrien, anything you'd like to add there? I mean, I know from your aspect, you're on the other side. So what do you think?
I think the goal is common across the type of assets that get damaged. At the end of the day, when an asset gets damaged, you want a visual assessment of the situation to really accelerate the recovery, unlock the funds, etc. And of course, cars and autos is the largest part of P&C. But when you get property damage, when you get other type of disasters, the need to gather visual information and to make decisions on this basis is common. In fact, the reason, for instance, for the need and the traction we have in Japan comes from the fact that you have so many natural disasters, right? And so in those cases, you end up with thousands of cars damaged at the same time, or tens of thousands of property damage at the same time. And so, be it auto, be it property, etc., the need to assess at scale with consistency those those damages to process and move on with the claim, I think is common. And really what we're seeing from the vendor standpoint is the need for an AI partner across business lines, not just specialize on one, but that you can trust to work with you and implement with you across the portfolio.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you, guys. I think we have time for one more kind of in-depth overall question here. And I've had a couple of questions come in that kind of center around this topic. So let me see if I can frame it to encompass this idea that's coming in through the questions. It's given the fact that we're transitioning to a process that in some ways is touchless or automated using AI, all of those terms get thrown around, right? How do we as an industry reconcile the empathy aspect? And how do we identify or use our human capital, our employees, to better manage that empathy piece with the person that's going through the claim? And just talk a little bit about how you see that and maybe what you've had, what you've experienced so far, and just to kind of round out the discussion. Graham?
So I mentioned earlier complex and what does that look like? So that's not a technology solution. Now it is larger claims by its very nature, but a much more personalized hand-holding experience would be what we're talking about and what we're looking at. I think there's also another conversation about people. So typically you get people that are very technically astute, but maybe not customer-centric. And then you get the opposite end, if you like. So very customer-centric, but not very technically astute. What we need to build going forward is people that can do both. And the reason is the simple stuff will be automated. Now, whether you choose to do a kind of follow-up call or call a part of the process just to touch base with the customer. That's for each company to decide. But the direction this is going in is you need customer-centric people who can deal with very technically complex subjects, and that's certainly what we're looking to build within Allianz.
Perfect. Mario, any additional comments from the Generali point of view?
No, I endorse all, and as I mentioned before, human touch is a fundamental piece in all this, because I believe that's what at the end will make the difference. As Graham was saying, if we are able to get rid of let's say the administration, and as I was saying before, if we add more and more automated controls, what remains for the claims experts is the human touch, is the empathy, is to call and talk to the claimant. You know, we have deployed a few years ago a very strong NPS program to get the customer feedback. And we notice, and you see the difference on customer reaction when you put in place measures such as calling back customers, or calling before writing things, or calling to explain things. It sounds simple measures, but I mean, not everyone inside a claims organization was used to call someone. So it was more on an inbound call mode rather than outbound. So therefore, the human aspect is key, and that goes hand by hand with the people. So with the claims people, that has to evolve in that direction.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Adrien, from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't believe in a vision where AI is doing everything. I think AI is actually here to you know, help and augment and support the team. I think you can see that as an expert in your pocket, right? But that's just a technical part. Effectively, what we've seen with those implementation is that it's actually taking care of the repetitive, the unnecessary task, and that is basically providing more time. That's providing more time for the claim handler to focus on the customer relationship and experience. It's also providing more time for the expert to focus on more complex cases, which is very needed. In the case of AGS that I was mentioning, it means the claim handler is actually spending more time on the phone, focused on the policyholder, on the accident that was something overwhelming. What's next? Because the AI is in the background doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the claim handler.
Excellent, excellent. So I think we're at a point now, we have quite a few more questions. I bet we could probably make this go on for another hour, but we are at the end of our time. First of all, I would like to thank the three of you, Graham, Adrien, Mario. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to share some of your knowledge and experience with us. It's always nice to kind of hear these points of view and be able to compare and contrast, or even match up what everyone is thinking. So it's great that you guys were able to join, and I can't thank you enough. Secondly, I would like to thank all of you who joined. I hope that you got as much out of this discussion as I did. I can't thank you enough for all the questions. I really wish we had enough time to answer them all. I probably have 10 more that I could go through, and that's with me trying to combine a few of them into broader questions so that we could hit a few more buttons. But thank you guys again. I love these discussions, and I look forward to seeing you and working with you guys in the future. So thank you very much, and everyone, I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, Graham, Mario. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.